Hello friends, I am going to challenge myself to see how many projects I can make for Christmas in July with last year's IOD Christmas paint inlay called Gloria. So this was the 2024 release. Let's see what pieces were in this that would be fun to try and work with. All right, so we have these different wreaths. It looks like the making of a sign, some little cherubs, and an angel. Now this tree, I think, is going to be my first project. But I love these little wreaths. How cute would these be with a little bit of the holly mold on top of the wreath? Cute, cute. And we've got another sheet. Another angel, some signage, some holly berries, and those little doves. A little bit more with some cherubs, some holly, and look at this little guy. Super cute. I might actually take him out of the center for a project. And I think, oh, there's another one with Merry Christmas and another tree, a ribbon with holly. These are going to be fun to work with. Oh, and we'd have a few more in here. Oh. Some more holly leaves and some oak leaves, some pumpkins. Those would be good for some fall. A harvest sign and a pumpkin. All right. Let's see. What should be my first project? I think it's going to be the tree.
Sun is high, it's a funny sight. North Pole shining under endless light. Elves are sweating, crafting on the fly. It's Christmas magic in July.
So for my first project for my Christmas in July, I'm going to start with a design from the 2024 holiday Iron Orchid Design paint inlay called Gloria. This one. And out of that, I have chosen the tree. It's a really cool tree design. And it's going to go on top of a couple of these old, vintage hand saws. So I have them stacked so that the serrated edge will be to the inside instead of to the outside, so that no one can get, cut or snagged on our design. And we'll get started. So for the inlay, I decided that I want it to be about a little higher up on it. Let's see if I can, if there's any way to zoom out a little bit more. That looks good. So then I'm going to take a piece of chalk and I'm just going to trace around the area where I want to put some paint in the middle to inlay the tray. So I will come back once I have that on there. Okay, I'm coming back now. I just used just a piece of chalk and did an outline on the saws. Let's see, I'll zoom in a little bit. Too close. I did an outline. I don't know if you could see. Kind of an outline there you could see on the saw to have a space to fill in with the chalk paint. And I'll be using DIY chalk paint in White Swan. So I'm just going to take a brush and fill in the design area. So we'll just get like a base coat down where I want it, and then I'll like feather out the second coat. I'll maybe blend in a little bit of apothecary into the white, and then feather the edges of the design, so the paint area, so it's not just a sharp paint edge underneath the inlay. So I'll fill this in, and then I will come back and show you after the first coat has been on and dried. Okay, so I have added some White Swan, a second coat of White Swan, and a little bit of apothecary blended in. Then I misted the inlay and the paint and laid it down into the paint, trying to really be mindful of the very center, because that's where one side of the serrated edge from the saw is, so that when they overlap. And now we're gonna let it dry a bit and then come back. So now we're going to give the tree a little mist, and wait a minute before we can start peeling it up, and hopefully it worked and gave us the design that we wanted. So let's get a little corner down here and see how this managed. Oh no. Okay, I'm going to have to do a little touching up, obviously, right along the edge, the center of the tree, where I thought perhaps we might have a little problem. So I think I will try to set this aside, let it dry, and then I'll move my saws apart and try to go back in and get a spot on the one side to fill in. So when the saws match up, we won't have this blank line down the center. Okay, I've separated the saws. I kind of dried the design just a little bit, and now I'm just going to add a little bit of white paint down that edge, and we will see about letting that coat get a little dry time, and then we'll come back and try the inlay again. Okay, let's try this again. Now I have done a coat of white swan chalk paint after the inlay dried, and then I did a light coat of sealer over the top to hopefully keep this from getting messed up when I try to touch up the middle here. So I'm going to use a piece of, this is just from one of the stamp sheets, this little plastic mylar piece. I'm going to hopefully use that to kind of help cover up the spot that's still good. Now I've taken the inlay and matched up where I want it to be, and I folded it back a little bit. I folded one side that's good back so that when I go to fill in this space, I won't be, hopefully, doing a second round over the top of what I already put down. And so that's why I put the plastic there. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip this over. I have just a hair back from the edge, and I'm gonna add a little bit of white swan and a little apothecary down the center. So I'm gonna get a little water off my brush, keep from hopefully getting the other side wet, because this is gonna be a trick, I think. So I'm just gonna add some fresh chalk paint here, and I'm actually going to line up the plastic to the edge. That way I can get close there, and just a tiny bit of this here, and I'll move the plastic back a little bit to line up the inlay. So I'm going to go ahead and give just a tiny mist there, and mist the back of the inlay, and then I'm going to leave the plastic there till I get this kind of lined up where I need it. And then I'm gonna move the plastic over and try to match up the inlay. I think like that is pretty close there. Okay, now I need to add a little bit more up here to this side that didn't quite transfer over. So now we're just going to press this down, and I'm going to pull my plastic back over and let the side that I don't want getting messed up get this a little wet. Tap it down, and hope we filled in that crazy blank spot that's going to be between the two saws. I'll be back. Okay, you can see my plan did not work very well of trying to line up and do that second part. It came back with the paint real heavy right there that was already on the inlay from before. So I'm going to try to just use a tiny brush, put a little bit of green where it matches up from the right side, and then I'll just kind of brush in some little fine details for with some weathered wood, because that paint color really matches the inlays. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit of apothecary where I see it line up kind of in the spots from this side. So you get a little bit of matchup underneath where it was, and then we'll give it a see what we can do here on how to fix it when it doesn't turn out exactly like what you want. So we'll give that a quick little dry. It dries pretty quick on the metal. So like I said, I'm just going to do just some little brush strokes. And really, it just was like when I bring it back over to match up, just have just this skinny little line down the center. So I'm just, maybe I'll find one of those cute little deer from the Kitschy Christmas transfer and see if we can hide a little bit down here. But really, I just didn't want just the white, you know, tree stem, the trunk to be white. So we're just gonna go in and fill in a little bit of this with some little strokes to fill in. And when it really overlaps, when it gets back, it has only a little tiny bit. Let's see if you can see just along the edge where it's the white. So if you're going to try this for yourself, I suggest getting your point where you're going to line up and then cutting your inlay and doing half one side, half the other, and just do a little bit of the weathered wood chalk paint as the trunk on the lower saw, and then that way it will kind of just match up better. So that's what I'm going to do. It's going to take me a minute to get it kind of filled back in how I'd like, because I think then I'll go in with a little bit of white highlighting in there, and then I'll come back and show you a close-up. Okay, so I fiddled with it for a little bit. It's not perfect, but I am okay with it. So give you a little closer shot of what I did along the center so that you can kind of see where the sawtooth is, right down the very center here. Right, I've kind of blended it in with a little bit of the what is this, weathered wood, DIY weathered wood, a little bit more of the apothecary and white swan, just kind of adding in a little green behind it and highlighting it with the white. So now I'm going to leave it for here to dry and then figure out blending out my edges and some typography on the bottom, maybe adding a little transfer if I can find one I like to it, and then I'll come back. Okay, I think we're back to where we left off. I think maybe I blended in the edges of it, and it gave a seal over the top of what I was working on. Now I'm going to stencil a little bit of typography down at the bottom, and then I'll give it a little bit of a seal. So I think I'm going to use parts of this stencil. I'm not sure, but I think maybe this was part of an Amazon bundle that I got a couple years ago. But so I'm just going to put this cedar, pine, fir, and spruce down below it. So let's see if I can kind of get where I put a little line on a line here that I had. So I'm just going to use a little bit of the weathered wood on a makeup sponge, just really lightly put it on there. It has a little bit of texture. Now I'm going to have to really hold it down here by the handle. Let me see. Little. We have cedar and pine, and then I will line up here to do the fir and spruce. See, the pine really came through where it was textured. Okay. Let's see here. All right, I'm gonna dry it up and put a seal on everything. All right, so I went back in and stenciled in this little operated since 1954 down at the bottom, and then used a little fine line and filled in, you know, the lines that are in the stencil right here, the little lines. So I just connected them all, and it's totally dry. And now I'm going to give it a little bit of a distress before I seal it, wax it, and then a little dark wax and maybe a little white splatter for a little more snow effect. So I'm just gonna knock down letters a bit. lighting dust off here. Right. Okay. And I think, right, match it up here. I think then I'm going to go ahead and give it a little coat of clear wax here. I haven't decided if I'm gonna paint the handles or if I'm just gonna leave them wood and add a little bit of dark and decrepit to one side so that it will be as dark as the other one. You'll see that in the final photos because I don't have enough space on my desk to show the whole thing. Okay, so I'm just going to use a little bit of clear wax and I'll come back when I'm ready to do dark wax. Okay, I'm just going to add just a small amount of dark wax just along the edge of it, and then I'll kind of rub it in, kind of bring it in to the center. I did a little more down at the base, but I just mostly just kind of want to give it a little silhouette, bring the eye in. So we'll just do a little dark wax on the edge. Right. And we'll just kind of bring it. Now these are not connected yet at the top, so they're sliding around. So when you do yours, be careful you don't snag yourself on your little serrated edges in the middle there. Right. So I'm just kind of rubbing it in a little on the edge and in towards the center. Now I actually am starting to be a little more happy with it since my my little mess up with my inlay and not thinking it through at the beginning of what might happen down the center between the two saws. But I think we came up with a pretty good plan to salvage it. So I now have this dark wax down at the bottom and along the edge. Kind of buff it back a little bit. What do you think? Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit on it. Elves are sweating, crafting on the fly. It's Christmas magic in July. Like the halo effect into the center with the dark wax. Alright, I'm going to give it a little bit of a white splatter and figure out what I'm going to do with the handles. And then reindeer prancing, no sleigh inside. Christmas is alive in July tonight. Pine trees swaying in the summer breeze. Ornaments sparkling in the July teas. Polar bears splashing in a nearby stream. This holiday's a midsummer dream. Snowflakes melting, bells still chime. Kris Kringle's laughing in the sunshine. Reindeer prancing, no sleigh inside. Christmas is alive in July tonight. Ice cream cones replace hot cocoa cups.
sunglasses on as the spirits live.